Intro. And we're going to be starting in just a few moments. Please be patient as we continue putting the show together there for everybody. And we'll be starting shortly. Okay, here we go. And here we go. There we go. Okay. Good afternoon. Today we're going to be taking a look at the history of Crime Stoppers of El Paso. We're going to be also looking a little bit about how it was that it was formed, looking a bit as what we had talked about in the first episode. All that and more coming up here on Crimecast. Please stay tuned. Welcome to Crimecast, and this is actually by Crime Stoppers of El Paso. This is part 2 of It Began with a Murder, as we discuss the unique history of Crime Stoppers. As we mentioned, this is actually a brand new initiative by Crime Stoppers of El Paso. It's an informational live stream and podcast where we will be giving you an inside look into Crime Stoppers of El Paso. So everything from the cases to how the program works, and of course also importantly answering any questions that you may have as to Crime Stoppers and some of our Crime Stoppers related topics. So just as a reminder, you can actually send us any type of questions that you may have or actually any type of comments by going to our website, cslpaso.org. Scroll down to the bottom of our website. There you will see a button that says drop us a line. So click on that button and drop us a line. Let us know what you'd like to hear about, some of the topics of interest, and what do you think of this this program. So let's go ahead and get started now with our program. As we had said, everything actually had started back in Albuquerque, and it actually started back in 1976. Now, in that first episode, we were actually talking a little bit about the murder of Michael Carmen. And so that of course was, that's Michael Carmen that you're looking at on there. Now, Michael Carmen on July 24th, 1976 was murdered. And that murder of Michael Carmen led to the creation of what has now become the Crime of the Week. And so as you see there, Michael Carmen was a young man. He was actually just 20 years old when he was murdered. He was actually working a shift at the U-Film over in northeast Albuquerque. And so he was filling in that overnight shift. Two men went into the store, ended up robbing it, and he unfortunately was murdered as a result of that robbery. And you see on there Albuquerque manslain and holdup. One of the interesting things there about Michael Carmen was that he actually had an interest in law enforcement. And even before this murder happened and started creating what it has now become, of course, known as our Crime of the Week, there was the initiative of Crime Stoppers had actually started just a little bit before. So we're talking about this murder back in July of 1976. Well, in April of that same year of 1976, there you see some articles from the Albuquerque Journal. Tip initiative plan and works by the city, and city police trying to start crime tip initiative project. So those were the initial parts of how Crime Stoppers was starting to be formed. So what happened was that the idea of Crime Stoppers back in April was the idea of creating an anonymous way for people to report information on crime. And so that when that started, that original concept was to have a way that people can report on homicides, sexual assault, aggravated assaults, and burglaries, both residential burglaries as well as those at businesses. And what the concept was trying to raise funds that if the information that they provided led to an arrest, that individual would be compensated, would be able to get a reward. And so from the initial starts of that, there was a board that was formed there in Albuquerque to raise the funds and have that relationship there with the police department. So that's a little bit of what happened. And so you would see on those articles back in the beginning of 1976, they were publicly announcing what they were planning to do there with Crime Stoppers and the initial parts of that program. Now, one of the important things on it talks about that the idea behind it was trying to encourage the community to give information that they may have on crime. One of the challenges that investigators have is that many times people may not feel safe providing information to law enforcement for a variety of reasons. And so that is one of the things that they were seeing there in Albuquerque. There's a lot of people, possible witnesses that may have seen this case, but they're reluctant to give that information to law enforcement. So what was created by this program is a way, by guaranteeing the anonymity to people, to be able to provide that information to law enforcement, and in addition, people can actually receive a reward for providing that information. And so really that is the whole purpose of Crime Stoppers, is trying to provide an anonymous way for people to be able to provide information on crime that can lead investigators to be able to solve those crimes. So that is a lot of what we've been working on. And as we've mentioned before, now we're going to a little bit to the beginnings here in El Paso. The early successes of Crime Stoppers was something that was seen throughout. There was a lot of newspaper articles that had actually made not only news in our area, but had actually made national news. So a lot of, like any type of new successful program, other cities and agencies will start to look and see if those successes, look at those successes and see if that is something that would work in their individual communities. And so here in El Paso, that is not very different from what actually began here. And so back in that, after those initial parts that started happening, we actually had somebody from our department, and that was actually Leo Samaniego. And he was, at the time, back in 1976, he was an inspector with the El Paso Police Department. And so Leo Samaniego, who is remembered as El Paso's County's longstanding sheriff, who served from 1985 to 2007, of course, was part of the El Paso Police Department before becoming sheriff. Now, Leo Samaniego rose through the ranks of the EPPD, becoming the rank of inspector. And so, as I mentioned, that was the rank that he held in 1976. But back in 1976, that inspector rank is what today is considered a deputy chief of police. So what happened is Inspector Samaniego heard what had happened in Albuquerque and thought it'd be important to learn more about what the program was about. So what he did, he sent two members of the El Paso Police Department to meet with Greg McAleese, who we told you about earlier, who was one of the main founders and there in Albuquerque was the detective responsible there for starting that program, to see if it was something viable here in the El Paso community. And so before we, of course, continue on with this information, as we mentioned, one of the starts of Crime Stoppers is that Crime of the Week, and trying to solve a variety of different type of crimes. So as we continue into the start of Crime Stoppers of El Paso, we are going to take a short break and ask your help in solving a murder. This is one of our Crime of the Weeks that took place this year, an unsolved murder that took place right at the beginning of 2005. So if you have, of course, any information on this case, you are, of course, asked to please call Crime Stoppers, and please take a look at this. In this Crime of the Week, Crime Stoppers in the El Paso Police Department are asking for help from the community and trying to find those responsible for a fatal shooting in central El Paso.
On Sunday, January 19th at 1:59 a.m., El Paso police officers responded to a local hospital after 19-year-old Anthony Rodriguez was taken in by friends with a gunshot wound to the upper torso. Rodriguez did not survive, and detectives found that the incident had occurred at Pershing and Gateway South at approximately 1:25 a.m. Rodriguez, along with three other friends, were driving in a dark-colored Chrysler 300 when they became involved in a confrontation with occupants from another vehicle. During that confrontation, shots were fired, and Rodriguez was critically wounded.
Anyone with any information on those involved in the murder of Anthony Rodriguez should call Crime Stoppers of El Paso at 566-8477. That's 566-TIPS. And we are back. And of course, as you saw on that, if you have any information, of course, on this crime, you are asked to call Crime Stoppers of El Paso. Before we took that little bit of a break, we were talking a little bit about Greg McAleese. And so, of course, Greg McAleese is really the person that is known as the founder of Crime Stoppers. And so there in Albuquerque, he is the one that led that initiative. One of the interesting things about when he led this initiative of Crime Stoppers was that he wanted to, of course, make something where people feel safe calling. But an interesting side note about it is he actually was an avid comic book reader, and he loved Dick Tracy comic books. Well, if you're familiar with that, Dick Tracy had a group of individuals that would help him called the Crime Stoppers. Greg McAleese reached out to the publisher of the Dick Tracy comic books and ended up obtaining permission to use the Crime Stoppers name for this new initiative that they were starting there in Albuquerque. They got the permission, and of course this grew to an international program. And as you're going to see here in just a bit, that is actually the Crime Stoppers. They're from the Dick Tracy comic book. So there's actually a badge that you would be able to order if you were part of that group and be part of the Crime Stoppers on there. So real neat initiative on there. But let's hear it again. We heard it last time from Greg McAleese telling us a little bit about how that start happened. I think that's important. I know we covered it a little bit on the first episode as we go into the particulars of Crime Stoppers of El Paso, because that's important to understand.
Hi, I'm Greg McAleese, and I'm the founder of Crime Stoppers. I was a violent crimes detective with the Albuquerque Police Department. Michael died about 4 hours later in the emergency room without being able to tell us who his assailants were. But after almost 2 months of investigation, we were no closer to solving that case than we were the very first night. And really out of desperation, I approached the local television station and I asked them if they would be willing to put a reenactment of the crime on their local newscast. My thinking here was that because of the fact that this was a heavily traveled street and we had a high probability of a witness, that possibly the reenactment might be able to trigger their memory. The television station we selected was KOAT-TV, which was the #1 station on the market, and they immediately agreed to not only do the reenactment, film it, but also to put it on their 10 o'clock newscast. And so on September 8th of 1976, the reenactment went on the air. We didn't know what to expect.
And as you had heard there, Greg McAleese had said he didn't know what was actually going to happen when this reenactment was going to take place. But it ended up really being that last element that was needed in Crime Stoppers to make it what has become today, and as we know the program today. And we were talking, as we start really now going into a little more particulars as far as the history of Crime Stoppers of El Paso. There was actually, several meetings that took place and trying to see what could be done to bring that program into our community. And we talk about a lot of the successes that start becoming public. And as you see on there, that's actually an article that came out in the El Paso Times here locally, talking about Crime Stoppers and how they saw a reduction in felonies. So they're talking about the successes that they've had in Albuquerque. But the reason that this article came out, this is actually of course, in 1978, Crime Stoppers of El Paso was underway to become the first official Crime Stoppers program in the state of Texas. And so this was an article that came out just before the first Crime Stoppers board met and ended up forming what today continues to be a very successful program. And so as you can see on there was, of course, a lot of excitement. Crime Stoppers is coming to the city. And so this is 1978 as the program is getting ready to start. So what happened? In November 2nd of 1978 at 2 p.m., community members held a meeting forming the very first Crime Stoppers of El Paso, Inc. board. El Paso, as we mentioned, was the first community in the state of Texas to create an official Crime Stoppers program and the second in the world. And when we talk about creating an official Crime Stoppers program, is that throughout the community, as we mentioned, this program formed there in Albuquerque. So a lot of people started seeing a little bit of the successes that that it was having. So people started trying to do similar type of programs where Crime Stoppers of El Paso became the first official program is because we worked together with Albuquerque. And there was, of course, other programs that also jumped on board there with Albuquerque, which created Crime Stoppers USA, which now has become really an organization that gives support to Crime Stoppers programs throughout the country. And there's even a Crime Stoppers International because, as we mentioned, this program has become an international program that works everywhere. And so it is a program that works between the community, law enforcement, and media to be able to provide information on crimes and be able to solve crimes. And so after that meeting that took place here in El Paso back in November, the founding board of directors back in 1978 was formed, and it was just a very interesting history when we look at that. So our very first president was W.J. McDuffie, and he actually was the president of Mutual Savings and Loan Association here in El Paso. Our vice president was Bill White, and he was the vice president there of, or actually was with Occidental Life, which was a life insurance company at the time. And then the vice president of information for the program was Roy Chapman. And Roy Chapman was the vice president of Mitoff Advertising, which actually still exists to this day. Then we also had the vice president of finance, which was Herb Rolfe, who was the PR director for Hotel Dew Hospital here in El Paso, a hospital that no longer exists, but he was part of that first executive board of Crime Stoppers of El Paso. We had Ms. Margie Velez, who was also our first secretary for the board, and we actually had about a year and a half ago, we actually held an event as we were celebrating the 45 years of Crime Stoppers here in El Paso, and we had the opportunity to meet Margie Velez, and she was able to share a little bit of her experiences there as being part of that founding board. And then, of course, our first treasurer, Bob Nagal, who is a retired FBI special agent. So a lot of great members of the community that ended up together, coming together to form this Crime Stoppers of El Paso board. Now, of course, we were just talking there about the executive board of directors. We also, of course, had the rest of the board of directors, which included Mervyn Morgan, who was a principal at Irvine High School. Another gentleman who is very well known, was very well known here in El Paso, but actually not only in El Paso, but I think throughout the country, which was a former mayor of El Paso from 1951 to 1955, which is Fred Hervey. And Fred Hervey was actually a businessman and founder of Circle K. And interesting thing, Fred Hervey had served as mayor of El Paso twice. He served from 1951 to 1955, and again from 1973 to 1975. And in 1978, he joined Crime Stoppers of El Paso, was part of that founding board of directors, and of course helped be part of this great organization that continues today. Among some of the other noteworthy members, which of course are everybody that was part of that first initial board, we had Jonathan Rogers. And so Jonathan Rogers was the president at the time of the mortgage insurance company of here in El Paso, but later on went to become mayor of El Paso from 1981 to 1989. We had Hal Daugherty Jr., who was the president of State National Bank. We had Mr. Herbert Schwartz, who was the president of the Popular Department Store, which was a store that was very important here in our community. And actually, where we're coming to you live from is actually Bassett Center. So Bassett Center, Bassett Mall is actually one of the locations where the Popular Store was at for many years, and one of the great staples here in our community. And so Mr. Schwartz was actually part of that initial board of directors. We also had General R.L. Shoemaker, who was later on the vice president, also of First City National Bank, so he also served as part of that founding board. Mr. Jose Armendariz, assistant principal at Eastwood High School. Don McCoy, El Paso Sand and Gravel Company. Mr. Bob Hoy, owner of Bob Hoy Volkswagen at the time, and of course the Hoy Automotive Group is still in existence today. We actually had his, I believe it was his grandson who also served in our board of directors for a bit a few years back. So we did have one of the members of the Hoy family that continued to serve the Crime Stoppers board. Sam Young Jr. Of El Paso National Bank was also part of that first founding board. And Miss Susan Caldwell, who was the civil service, part of the Civil Service Commission. So as you can see, it was a varied group of individuals that served part of the board. You did not hear any names of any law enforcement that were part of that board, and that is one of the things that, again, in the Crime Stoppers and the way that the program works, law enforcement is not part of the board of directors. They are not involved in the decision making of the program. It is all done by members of the community and that board that makes decisions of what direction the board is going to do, the initiatives that the program should do. And of course, that partnership that they have with law enforcement, our role from law enforcement is actually serving as advisors to that board. And there is an agreement. All of the programs, just like the Albuquerque one that started, and of course, that initiative was created by a detective back in Albuquerque, there, Greg McAleese. But when all of this started, that initiative was to be able to go ahead and create something that was a partnership. And so, of course, we knew that there still had to be some type of law enforcement involvement to handle the tips that were coming in. You needed somebody with law enforcement experience to handle that part. And so that's exactly what we do. And here in El Paso, we actually have Mr. John Purchase and Mr. Roger Chides, who are the two coordinators for the program here in El Paso, and myself, who also act as a coordinator and liaison there for the program. And so our job is just maintaining the board informed of those tips that are successful, that are solved, making sure that we're educating our law enforcement community on how the program works, how they can use it, and ensuring that we're communicating that information to our news media, that we're communicating that information to our law enforcement partners, and having that relationship, and then of course reporting to the board on a monthly basis those tips that were successful and do qualify for payment. So that's a little bit of how the program has worked and has continued to work. And we have had many successes. We've of course have this is one of our first Crime of the Weeks that was featured back in 1978, and this was a reward that was offered on a 13-year-old that had been murdered, Jeanette Bonilla, and this case has actually remained cold for many years, so it's going to be coming up now on 50 years. So we do ask anybody that may be familiar with this case, and this might be one of the cases that we're going to explore a little bit later in one of our future episodes, the murder of Jeanette Bonilla. But anybody that has information on this case, it is very important for them to definitely let us know. The first case that we offered was this murder case, which happened in Northeast El Paso, and this was actually a bar owner that was murdered there inside of her bar back in 1978. But there's been a variety of cases that the program has featured, and as you can see by some of these articles that we're sharing with you, Crime Stoppers has a good record. We have been very fortunate to be successful. The community believes in the program. We've been around, coming up now soon to be our 50 years here in the community, and it is because, of course, the support that we have from all of you. And here's another interesting article, anti-crime program working, just talking about all the successes that the Crime Stoppers program is is having. We have a few more information that we'd like to share with you about the program and the successes that it's had, but before we do that, I'd like to take just a real quick break on another Crime of the Week. This is actually Crime of the Week that we just recently featured, which is a murder that took place in November of 2024. It took place at an apartment complex here in El Paso. And if you have any information on this case, we need your help. Please let us know if you have any information on this case, and we'll be right back. In this Crime of the Week, Crime Stoppers in the El Paso Police Department is asking for help from the community and trying to find those responsible for a murder at an East El Paso apartment complex.
On Sunday, November 17, 2024, at 4:06 a.m., residents at the Vista Sierra apartment complex at 6813 Belrose called police after hearing what sounded to be an argument and then gunshots. When the officers arrived, they found 26-year-old Jerome Douglas Harper had been fatally shot. Witnesses reported seeing a silver-colored SUV leaving the area immediately after the shooting. Investigators know someone has information as to who was involved in Harper's murder.
Anyone with any information on this murder should call Crime Stoppers of El Paso at 566-8477. That's 566-TIPS. And we're back. Thank you for watching that. Again, if you have any information on any of these cases, it's important for you to call Crime Stoppers of El Paso. What we've tried to do in this program is just give you a general overview of how the program was created, how it works. We're going to go into more details on some future programs, but we want to hear from you. Please go into our website, cselpaso.org, scroll all the way there to the bottom. You'll see a button that says to drop us a line. So drop us a line. Let us know what you'd like to hear about in future episodes, any questions that you may have. This program is for you, and we want to give you really an inside look into Crime Stoppers of El Paso. It's your program, and it is something that is unique to our area, being the first program in the state of Texas, the second in the world. This is something unique, and we want to share the excitement of what Crime Stoppers is, the great initiative that was born here in this community, and that is helping solve many cases. One of the cases that was very significant, and I'll share this from my experience, I've been involved with the program for almost 24 years on and off, so a great portion of my career in the El Paso Police Department, I've been involved one way or the other with the Crime Stoppers of El Paso program. But I had the opportunity to take a tip that ended up solving a capital murder case. This was a case that had happened back in 2002, where we had Mr. Charles Potts, who was working a convenience store, very similar almost to the story that we have of Michael Carmen that initiated that first Crime Stoppers program. So Mr. Potts here in El Paso was working a convenience store in Northeast El Paso, was working the overnight shift. He was a Army veteran, retired, but just liked dealing with people and enjoyed working those hours. Well, two young men went into the store. One of them was actually armed with a shotgun and fatally shot Mr. Potts. And of course, one of the major changes that have happened over the years from the initial starts of Crime Stoppers back in 1976, and of course here in El Paso in 1978, is that technology was different back then, and there was not really anything that was available for stores to have security cameras. Well, in 2002, of course, many stores now had security cameras. They had, whether it was video or whether it was still pictures, but they had some type of system that would many times be able to capture the individuals that were going into the store and committing crimes. So this particular case was captured on video. That was actually shared to the community, and over 150 tips came in on that case, and one of those tips actually providing the information that led to the arrest of two young men, one of them 19 and another one who was a minor, 16 years of age, from Chaparral, New Mexico. So the program is very successful. We have had great successes here in El Paso, and it's all because of you. I'd like to thank you for your time, for staying and watching, learning a little bit more about our program. We promise to have more information for you, and as we start going through these programs, I know that they're going to get a little more interesting. Thanks again for your time, and we'll see you next time.